Hello, welcome everyone to the Cluster Addons meeting. It is the 12th of November, and we have a couple of things on the agenda. Actions from last time. So we had a couple of things for the KubeCon face-to-face meeting. Did we decide on anything there? I noticed there was also a question on Slack from somebody, so we're still going to announce it during the contributor summit, like where everyone is going to meet or which.
I believe I was going to look into this. I did not do a lot, but I was just paging through the schedule, and it seems like the first day we could meet over lunch if we would like to. I don't know exactly where, but because I'm not familiar with the venue. But unless anyone has any reasons to favor or disfavor the first day, i.e. Tuesday, let's call it Tuesday rather than the first day, then I will propose that, and I will circulate, or we can circulate that to people that ask.
Super. Excellent.
That sounds good to me. Is there any other agreement for folks who will be at KubeCon on the call?
Works great for me.
Cool. I will add +2 in the notes. So there we go. Tuesday. 2 for Tuesday.
Sounds good. And if we get more information, we can always change. But yes, it sounds like Tuesday is I didn't see much. There was not a lot of. There's a real break for lunch. There aren't talks that go over lunch. It seems like Tuesday feels like a reasonable day.
That would be excellent, especially getting early on in the conference in front of each other. And then even before that, on Monday, right, we have the Contrib Summit. So we have our SIG update. I haven't talked with Timothy. He hasn't asked anybody for slides, but I think eventually we're probably going to need some. So I will mention Daniel started a slide deck, and we can make sure that that's public. And then does anyone have, I don't know, we just need to succinctly describe to new contributors why add-on stuff is cool and where they can help. So super cool add-ons. Okay. And then Jessica, you mentioned that you and other folks would be working toward a shareable document for the Google Doc.
This is Nick.
Okay.
I just know Jessica's a little busy right now at the moment, but yeah, we are just looking to transfer the doc into a medium that we can share with people. We have already Google Docs. We just have to put the permissions and we'll put it up in the agenda as soon as it's ready.
Thanks, Nick.
Super, thank you.
And then, yeah, we kind of have to, full disclosure for anyone watching the recording is we're kind of repeating things that we accidentally started talking about before the recording. And then, Justin, you mentioned one thing, which is not a particular action item, but you said you were working on the multi node local DNS.
Node local DNS. Yes, I was like, what did I say? Yes, I am. Just as a sort of status update, I am trying to get an operator using our patterns into COPS, looking at the node local DNS. I have an operator if anyone is chomping at the bit to get that. I am like still trying to figure out how to get it, but it's pretty straightforward. But I'm still trying to figure out how to get that into COPS and what the right way to do that is. But like maybe by KubeCon we will have some PRs that show at least a flow into COPS, which hopefully then we can talk about like how that compares with like the Kubedian flows and things like that.
So
the topic for Monday.
As far as mechanisms for installing that, I mean, like, would you welcome just using customize and invoking the library?
Yeah, it's less about in my mind, it's less about the installation and more about how you describe like the add-on. So like kubeadm has this kubeadm config file, right? And you have some like additional objects at the end. Kops has an S3 or a GCS bucket and moving or also supporting CRDs. So it's less obvious where to put those extra objects, but I mean, I don't think it's unobvious. So I will probably put them in another folder in S3, another folder in GCS. I haven't decided what the right thing to do is when you're using CRDs, but that's what I'm trying to think about. Less about the, I have yet to discover the problems that you are referring to, as it were. I'm still dealing with like, how do I even say I want something?
I'm just checking in because I'm putting in a lot of work on that side, and it would be excellent, right, if we could have something that is being used by multiple things.
Yeah,
because
I mean, customized feels great. I think I don't think I need any changes yet. I keep doing add-ons which don't even need any fields in the CRDs. So
yeah, okay. And then the node local DNS, I mean, you're gonna need to supply like, oh well, no, you can figure out what the cluster DNS is from inside the cluster as long as you have connectivity to the API server. So
yeah, and
you basically don't have to supply any fields, really.
Yeah, which is sort of annoying. The thing that's hard is the cluster.local, the suffix. You can figure that out. So I'm just going to hard code it for now, and like you can actually figure it out by looking at the DNS resolve path and other things.
Oh,
but,
interesting.
Given that I think most people use cluster.local, and I'm sure I'm about to be corrected.
That's a fine default to start out with. It's alpha stuff, right? I'm thinking of doing the exact same thing for kubeproxy, actually. I know, Jeff, you're on the call. If we can talk about kubeproxy operator in a moment. And maybe suss through some stuff there. But yeah, as far as, I'll just mention here that the node local DNS stuff has minimal need for user supplied fields. And then I'll mention, DNS IP can be inferred. Cluster domain can be inferred.
Could be inferred, yes. There's a relatively interesting, there's a more interesting thing in the node local DNS. The original configuration of it used would replace the DNS server IP passed to the kubelet to point to the node local. That is super hard to do. I don't think we actually need to do that anymore because I think we can do it with IP tables rules, which I think is actually the current encouraged configuration. But yes, so for V0, I am just trying to like get away without those changes. But there's another one of these, Calico needs to, or Weave needs to open certain ports. In this case, this operator needs to configure something on kubelet, a sort of action at distance type thing.
So yeah, there's probably like a lot of different ways to configure the routing and fallback and all that. I remember reading through the doc with all the proposals for the node local DNS, particularly when it comes to HA and evicting those pods. It gets like really weird what the failure mode should be. So, that's potentially something that could have like some sane configuration paths for user, or maybe something will magically emerge that will be like the superior engineering solution for everybody. But yeah, we'll see. So maturity on what the best solution is for general use is not developed. Right. But we just need something that works, and probably at least for the AWS users, because that's where the majority of the clusters who are having DNS issues are going to be right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's handy everywhere. It is particularly handy on AWS.
Yeah, cool. Prioritizing this users with DNS perf. Okay. If you have anything that you wanted to discuss, Jeff, I wanted to give you a chance because I've been looking at kube proxy now that the KubeADM work is starting to be more mature from an instrumentation side. I don't know if you've kept playing with this because it is a little bit of a thorny problem, but you were pretty emphatic about it like 1 or 2 meetings ago.
Yes, I have locally. I have a kube proxy that I can spin up like a kinder cluster, which was really fun. Thanks for that tip. It's really great for this kind of development. I can spin up a kinder cluster, run the kube proxy operator locally, like on my machine, and then deploy kube proxy that way. The only big work there, and when I say big, I think it's just a couple little tweaks to the operator manifest, is just to get it to schedule on the cluster when the cluster doesn't want to schedule stuff, basically.
Like the pod needs to tolerate taints?
Yeah, and that's just like the diff from, like right now I have the base kube builder operator manifest, and I just need to make the tweaks to add the taints and host networking, I believe, too.
So you want to target the control plane nodes with like a daemon set, and then have those pods land on those nodes, and then try to find the API server that way?
Well, I think how did I do this? I haven't touched this for 2 weeks, I'll be honest, but where I got it to 2 weeks ago, I believe I targeted the control plane. The plan was to target the control plane and just have it use localhost to access the API server, but then make that a configurable value on the operator.
Localhost to get to the API server. Yeah. Is the API server usually listening on the interface, and does it validate HTTPS on localhost?
I think so.
With the KubeADM install? I know there's been like weirdness in this area for several KubeADM releases where the UX for localhost stuff, it even was broken in 1.15.
That I could definitely use some guidance on.
Okay. Yeah. It was like if you wanted the API server to only listen on the localhost address, KubeADM was doing things to IP addresses where that was a non-functional branch. Basically, it would exit, calling your requests. But maybe when it's just using the default behavior, it listens on all interfaces, and localhost is part of the SANs for the HTTPS stuff. Okay, cool. I'll just add a note here, or localhost.
I will make it I will commit myself to open the PR before KubeCon to have a nice little deadline, though.
Yeah. So this kind of kube proxy operator will only function when you can schedule to the same infrastructure and network namespace of the control plane nodes, right? So is there something you want the operator pod to land? Yeah, because ultimately you want to configure a daemon set for the entire cluster where all of the kube proxies know what API server's address is, right?
Yes.
And you do that by landing a single operator pod on a control plane, talking to the local host to the API server, and then you can like ask for the endpoints of the default Kubernetes service or something?
Yeah, I believe. How did I do this? I wish I can't SSH in my machine right now, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I thought that if you set up host networking, you land. No, I have to look at this. If I say anything, I will be wrong. So I have to check.
Okay. the only other thing I can think of is kubeproxy is kind of similar to the kubelet, right? In that it's a component that needs to talk directly to the API server, right? Since it's neither the kubelet nor kubeproxy can depend on the existence of cluster IPs being routable. It's kubeproxy or some other CNI component's job to set up the cluster IP routing. So just how do you, as an add-on, end up getting the API server's target address? So that's the problem statement.
Mm-hmm.
In Kubernetes, because yeah, I mean, it certainly would be easier if the operator without any
It'd be nice to detect it. I mean, you could easily make it a field on the CR or something, but it'd be better to detect it and just provide it to the cluster, which I think is doable. Because if you can connect to the API server has like an announce address.
Yes, as soon as you can connect to it, then you can get the endpoint from the default service.
And when you schedule the pod, if you schedule a pod with host networking, does your service account that you get provisioned, does that tell you to talk directly to the API server?
Oh, no, I wouldn't think so.
Through the CNI.
I would imagine that your kube config from the service account is going to look the same as any other pod, because if you're hostnet on some worker, then you don't have any kind of local access to an API server. You're going to want to go through the service, the default service. So that mechanism is dependent that something has made that service routable, probably kubeproxy, on that same node. But yeah, kubeproxy is a node topology add-on, right? It's dependent on the assumption that you have nodes that want to route cluster IPs, and it modifies the kernel to do that. And then the other part is, yeah, if you want to try to leverage the local host net host stuff by landing a pod on some control plane, then this operator will only work on clusters that have schedulable control plane components. So whereas the core DNS operator would work even if you can't schedule to a control plane node, because that's just DNS stuff and service routing already works. The kubeproxy thing is specifically for cluster installers that want to have control plane nodes that have kubelets on them.
I'd say maybe. I don't think we need that distinction, but we may need it to get fancy with auto resolving the IP. We need to pass through the API server's IP address to the configuration of the add-on, and in that case we could run it on any node that's joined the cluster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you would still just use the operator to create the daemon set, because I mean, if you're asking the user to supply the IP, you could just create the daemon set directly from the add-on.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Cool. Kind of just thinking through things here. I've been trying to decipher what the simplest and most user-friendly way for a user to supply an argument to an add-on is. Mm-hmm. With something like Helm or JSONet, this is super easy, but Kustomize, it's not really meant to do that. Everything is patches. There's no way to say hey, here's a structured list of 5 things with names. Now put them into my manifests. So I can think of something hacky with config maps and variables, but we'll see where that ends up. I might write a kubeproxy add-on that doesn't depend on an operator, and we'll see if it works. Jeff might have dropped, or I might have dropped. No, yeah, I can still see everyone else. So maybe Jeff dropped.
You're good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we talked a little bit about the kube proxy problem statement and all that. So we can probably move on if Jeff doesn't come back. Thanks to Jeff. Yeah, so Daniel, you made these next points, which refer to work that I'm doing.
Yes. So Lee and I had been, or was mostly me, but I was getting a lot of clues from Lee. We were working on a small demo, and I was really surprised. Like for me, it was first time actually gluing all the things together to make things work. Just share my screen. Can you see this GitHub thing here?
We can, yes.
Yes. So I was really surprised that the bits at the bottom were all that was required to get the add-ons working. So that's a kubeadm config. And yeah, I was also so pleased with the results that I thought, like, yes, we need to get this into the hands of people. And since we've been looking at the add-on installer POC for quite a while already, I was wondering, like, what is still required to land this PR, because it's sort of in our hands. And then the next step would be to figure out, like, what would be required to get the work into kubeadm. But yeah, I wanted to bring it up for discussion because there wasn't much happening in the PRs for a couple of weeks.
Perhaps that'd be a great topic for the face-to-face on Tuesday.
I made this, yeah, it's, so our code freeze for the core Kubernetes repo is going to be 2 days from now, I believe, if I remember correctly. It's either 2 or 6 days from now. Yeah, I think it's the 14th. Yeah, and so 2 days from now. And so we don't have like really any restrictions on like what we can do in our repository, but if we want to do things in kubeadm before then, which may or may not be feasible depending on people's review bandwidth, then it's we may not make 117. But which, you know, would delay, I guess, getting stuff into the hands of the users for 3 months, which is not ideal, I guess, but it's not the end of the world. So yeah, but the add-on installer library, I pushed some patches to it last week and this morning that basically fix the kubeconfig stuff, implement the change that Jessica and pointed out, that Jeff also pointed out, which is the extensions k8s.io namespace for the config. And then that example that Daniel was showing you just had a list of strings, but the config in the newer version of the library is now structured a little more. So the add-ons have names and different kinds of references that you can pass. One is just a plain manifest. So it now supports like manifests that aren't customized, and as well as directories that are not customized, just like directories of manifests. Both of those are very common, so it's a good thing to be able to support for users. And then I just added a delete function and added like support for recursive stuff. And I have this now plumbing into kubeadm, and I just need to open up a patch, and things are working. So I want to, it's pull 25 on the add-on operators repository, which I believe Daniel's linked. And I want to merge this so that we can actually use the library without having to reference my fork. but I definitely wasn't going to do that without at least letting somebody say something. I've done my best to implement the feedback, so let me know if anyone's got any reservations or comments.
I have one comment. I guess I'm still confused about the extent to which this is using operators versus just applying manifests.
So it doesn't have a strict opinion about like whether or not to use an operator or not. It should support basically people extending the add-on in whatever way they see fit. So if they want to copy a manifest and host it on an HTTP server or in a bucket, they can do that. If they want to use a Git repository, that's probably a common method. But we need some place, like if you want to install anything into a cluster, we need some place to have those definitions. We need a place that has a pluggable, like user editable list of things. So the add-on installer configuration and the library are intended to be importable, vendorable implementation of the configuration and the mechanism for applying those things to the cluster. For simplicity, it shells out to kubectl. And because now we have the ability to use existing manifests, we have support for add-ons in that fashion. People are distributing them already. And then there's the customized thing, which has upstream support in kubectl. That's really the only reason we chose it. So how does it bridge to core DNS operator, right? We could have add-on operators. We already have the Git repository, right? So we can tag in our Git repository. We can reference a subdirectory. We can put a customized dir there. And then that folder for core DNS operator would have RBAC split out into its own thing. It could have different patch directories for different use cases. And then it would have the manifests and the RBAC necessary for the operator to run and then and manage its own thing. One of our patch directories could be like the default custom resource, right, patched into the operator, right? So the operator itself, when you deploy it, is not going to do anything, right? You need to put a custom resource into the cluster. We could either deploy that as a patch or as a separate add-on. So.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, to me, this feels useful and additive to, or like separate from what we're doing. Like it is a very important mechanism for installing arbitrary manifests, and we should have it for, like, it will be great for installing like end user applications, and it will be great for installing the operators, as you say. I do think we still want, and COPS has a similar but more limited field where you can like specify a list of URLs, right? So like that does a URLs that should be then applied to the cluster when it comes up. So this does feel like something that should exist, right? Having a standard for this is great. I feel like we still want operators, and we still want CRDs to be like a smoother is that fair? But you know, like a first class operation where you don't have to patch them, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say that the CRD should be bundled with the operator add-on, right? And so what other challenges do you see there? Like for working with them from a usability perspective, right? Other than
that the CR instance should be just like, I would like only to have to declare the CR instance. So like when I want to install node local DNS, I want to be able to have a kind node local DNS object, and that hopefully should be all I need to specify. If I want to change the operator, great, right? Like we should be able to do that, but I shouldn't have to like get like really stuck into things if that's all I want to do. I should just be like, yep, I want to turn on node local DNS. So obviously discussions to be had related, but in some way I drop in a YAML file which just has that or add a YAML block.
That is a really good point on usability. I don't think we've ever said that out loud before. So thank you for saying that out loud.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I just like coming from like trying to get it into COPS, right?
I didn't know that COPS had a place where you could apply URLs already.
I had forgotten until I went looking for this code to be like, I thought we had like, anyway, yes, I went splunking around and found it. I was like, oh yeah, we have. It's very limited. It isn't, I don't know if it supports customized, for example. But
So
yes, I feel like it should be a feature of, it is a very valid feature to have.
from a user, because yeah, if you can just supply a kind and the tool already knows where to get the operator, that's not, it doesn't sound like a super level playing field. Like it's not an open mechanism for like anybody to be able to distribute anything they want.
That is, yeah, you mean because there's this implicit or mapping defaulting from a kind to the operator. Yes, I agree with that. And I think it's super important for other reasons as well to be able to override that. Like we don't want to do all this work only to then become the bottleneck on the operator side. But I don't think that should preclude being able to have defaults. I would like to make that as pluggable and replaceable as we can possibly imagine, but I don't know.
One thing that is not supported right now in the add-on library is the inline patching, which I think for what you're talking about is one of the more important use cases, because then it allows you to just in your add-on install configuration just paste the custom resource directly into whatever you're doing. So that is definitely something we should consider supporting. Another way to do that would be to just have like a string field called manifest inside of where you could just declare an add-on that's literally just a multi-doc string. Because that could be a place, right, where it's like I have my 2-line definition that says please install core DNS operator. Right, and then I have the next add-on is a string that I paste in for the custom resource. And that's not that much more than just pasting in the custom resource. It's just a few lines and a little bit of key value pairs. Which if it's in a README, should be pretty usable for people.
Yeah, that feels fair. I think, I guess, when it comes to PR25, I will take another look. I am in favor of merging it as long as, like, I think it's a valuable feature and I think we should standardize this. I think we also want a flow for like a more direct flow or a flow where I can put my CRDs in there, but we can start with 25 and I think it's a valuable feature that we should get out there.
Yeah.
I worry someone's going to yell at us, but sorry.
Yeah, Justin, can you maybe write down the flow that you were saying? I didn't catch all of it, and I think being able to read it async may help a little bit.
Yeah, it's not fully baked in my mind, but I will.
The problem and the flow and all that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think there's an overall need to just understand like what are the unique semantics of operators and CRDs. I think that's one, maybe an extension to what we have today, but that's like an explicit goal is defining those.
Yeah, one thing that I've kept in mind is that like if you've got a bundle of stuff, kubectl will apply the CRDs first. So that means that you don't have to like worry about adding any kind of special handling, right? That is going to make sure that CRD, that the API is registered before you can apply the custom resource. So that's definitely something I kept in mind, right? Like, okay, well, if we build this generic thing, is it going to, like, through a fairly minimal declaration, actually get everything the operator needs into the cluster? Has been a big concern of mine. I would like to see if, with like maybe a follow-up PR for the inline patching, if we can use the library and provide some examples of like, hey, this is a minimum flow for like how we can get a user to specify the custom resources they want into the cluster, and actually have them be backed by an operator that was previously not going to be installed. Because that's ultimately, I think, what Justin, what you're describing, right, is it should be easy for the user to say, hey, I want this add-on. and it requires this custom resource, plop it in, and then before there wasn't going to be an operator in the cluster, but now there is. Like
Yes,
before.
yes, I would say the observation would be an instance of the CRD is sufficient to know that we want an operator for it, that there's an intent to install the operator, and we could choose to infer that. And it brings challenges around, like, are we creating first class and second class CRDs and all this sort of stuff? But like that's the sort of optimizing for user experience that I would like to see.
Yeah, I mean, if there was like a network accessible place, it gets tricky because some of these tools are supposed to work offline, right? So it's in the offline, category, you either are requesting the user to like pull a map from somewhere, or the map needs to be built into the binary.
We don't do that. Yes, I like yes, but yes, that's something I've learned is building stuff into the binary is painful. But yes.
Yeah, I mean, if the map is extensible and well documented, and everywhere that you find an operator, there's a good chance that the README says add this to your map. Then I could see that being kind of helpful. I don't know how much more helpful that is of like having the kind to operator mapping than it is to just supply in the list of add-ons, hey, give me this thing.
That's fair.
So I will say that like kubeadm already has like first class support for the kube proxy configuration, which is technically like that's more first class, right, than something else. And that like if you pass in a kube proxy config with like your multi-doc kubeadm config, like that'll plumb through. So that's that, like if you wanted to support node local DNS through its CRD and then have that be like imported inside of COPS, and then just like have it automatically mint a add-on installer configuration for you that works, then that sounds sensible to me. Because that's already how it's intended to work in kubeadm, where like the user doesn't supply an add-on installer configuration, so kubeadm can go mint one for you. And, a cluster without core DNS and kube proxy is not what most people want. Right? Most people want those two things at least, and then probably some CNI on top of it. But so the default behavior in kubeadm has traditionally been to install those two add-ons from the hard-coded manifests. And if you enable the feature gate, the intention is that those two add-ons will still get installed, but instead of using the hard-coded code paths, they will actually default to an add-on installer configuration that is useful. So I could see the logic being like, okay, well, if you pass this CRD to COPS, COPS knows what node local DNS is. And if you aren't asking it to do something special with add-ons already, then it'll go do that special thing for you. And then that's kind of that UX that you're looking for.
Yeah, there are certainly going to be challenges as well about like, what if I did want to specify an operator myself, and how would I make it clear that like to tell COPS to back off type thing? And yeah, this is the sort of thing I'm exploring in this.
Yeah. To share what the kubeadm UX would be with the existing things that are already in kubeadm, the KEP specifies that we already have a subcommand called kubeadm config, and it allows you to print defaults for various configuration types. So you could pass it your intended cluster configuration and ask it to print your add-on installer defaults, right? So that allows the user to then say, okay, well, what would COPS do, right? If I was doing nothing, but I wanted it to do these things. And then you can get out a very specific add-on install configuration that has all of the COPS defaults for your specific use case. And then now you can take that dynamic defaults that have been serialized for you, you can ad lib onto it. When you pass that back to COPS in your next run, COPS is like, oh, the user's asking me to do something very special. I'm not going to interfere. That's the kubeADM UX for it. In general, like I disagree with like mutating user configs. Like if a user asks you to do something, you should do exactly that. So then it becomes, okay, well, how do I make the default path very simple and low touch for people, but then allow somebody who reads the documentation and who has like significant needs to get exactly what they want. So as soon as you're not on the default path anymore, you would trust that the user is going to get to exactly what they want, and you just want to empower them to get the full detail of that UX by gracefully upgrading it. Sorry, it's a little bit of a rant, but hopefully that's helpful from a kubeADM perspective.
It is, thank you.
Okay, well, yeah, I think that last bullet point that Daniel was referring to was just landing the stuff into kubeADM and whether that'll happen before 1.17. My thoughts are maybe, if I can convince like Lubomir or Fabricio to help with the review. And I'm looking to get a patch up this afternoon, and we'll post in both channels when that's up if anyone is curious about what the integration code looks like for all of that UX. So
super. Do you like, I think the last time we talked, you had a couple of things you still wanted to do or you would like to land later. Maybe if we had like a short shopping list of this, we could say like, okay, for revision 1, we want to land this, and because the feature is going to be hidden behind a feature gate anyway. So I don't think there's a huge risk in trying to get this in, but then we could later on like collaborate and work on the stuff that needs to be done together.
yeah, I can agree with that. I think that what is ready to be patched into kubeADM is already useful. It's missing some meat from a usability perspective, like for the config stuff. So it needs to be able to like prune stuff from an old config. The old config should be stored into the cluster, right? So that there's a record of what happened and so that it can be used later on. Sure. As a comparison of what the user is actually intending. Mm-hmm. And then so just that stuff, and then the default printing instrument for that config are the only features that really need to be put in. And that patch, the inline patching. So those things could definitely go like into a later rendition, like a 1.18 cycle.
So prune config, the inline patching was the third bit? Sorry.
Yeah, prune config, inline patching, and config print.
Perfect.
Those are probably the only ones that are really necessary.
You can see how like we can all see the individual things that are still missing and would be great to have. But like I come from the other side of the spectrum where I just, built this small demo and I'm super excited and feel like people should be looking at this. And I think it would be nice to, at some stage, get a blog post out and say like, okay, this is the stuff that is already possible. We've been working on this, and I think it might also get like more folks into our meetings again, and we would have more hands on deck for, implementing all the stuff we've been talking about.
Well, and to Justin's credit, like the node local DNS, having that in an operator that is just generally applicable with zero user configuration is super valuable. And the add-on installer configuration and the integration with kubeadm that is already written can already apply that, right? Like if it's packaged up in an image and the manifests are somewhere, then we can now spin up a kubeadm cluster that like has WeaveNet, node local DNS, and kubeproxy and core DNS like all spun up. And it requires no operator action afterwards, which is also becomes increasingly valuable with the composition of cluster API. Because then all of the cluster API bootstrap providers that are using things like kubeadm under the hood can supply, you know, those add-on definitions and get node local DNS, right, without any user intervention or operator intervention. So yeah, folks have wanted support for that for a really long time. So being able to even just have an experimental feature where people can get to a cluster with that installed in a simple manner is something worth talking about for sure. Blog post, mailing list, yeah, side conversations at KubeCon. So, Justin, if you have a repo for that somewhere, it would be great to add it to the meeting notes. I will definitely take a look at it.
I'm gonna PR it hopefully later today. I'm trying to get.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I guess if that PR shows up sometime this week, I'll probably look at doing an add-on installer demo, and then maybe we can talk about the UX a little bit more and see.
Yeah, just as a meta point, I'm PRing it to the add-on operators repo, to our main repo, as it were.
Yeah.
We know the operators aren't going to live there forever, but we don't have a better place for them right now. As far as it seems better than.
Yeah, I mean, for one, all of the project management right now is pretty much living there. Like we have a pretty good list of issues with discussions and all that kind of stuff. So it's a good place for it. I agree. And then, I mean, also another meta point, right? Which is that, like, if we do it right, it really shouldn't matter to users where these things live, right? Because you just need to be able to reference them somehow.
That's true. We do want the projects to build their own high quality operators rather than our interpretation of things, but yes.
Yeah, I believe Core DNS is interested in that. And they've already done some work to do config migrations and things in a codified manner. So that's good. The node local DNS implementation that you're working on, is it a kubedns based or core DNS based one?
It's core DNS based. It is the one that is in the bash scripts.
Right. It wasn't clear to me which one was used.
It's core DNS.
Okay.
It's based on core DNS.
Cool. So that runs core DNS on every single node, and then it runs a central one, right?
It uses, so there's a small wrapper around a core DNS process that sets up some IP tables interception rules. Runs as a daemon set, so runs on every node. And then it uses whatever DNS you have configured. So in theory, you can run kubedns classic with node local DNS if you so choose.
I like how retro that sounds. kubedns classic.
I can't remember the name of the original one. I can't really remember. Sky DNS?
Sky DNS, yeah.
Try to break out that one. See if it scales when we have a nice cache in front of it.
Yeah. I think I'll just run bind, right? And then update the service records myself using an operator that changes a config map. So. So cool. Someday that'll just be like a quick little hack, I guess, right? Right now, that sounds like a horrific statement, but one day that'll be as easy as like writing a bash script, I guess.
We could probably do it pretty quickly, I would guess. It wouldn't necessarily be the best idea, but sorry. But
yeah, but how many times does not the best idea get deployed to production on a group of Linux servers, right?
That is true.
Right. You got like cron hitting some monitoring endpoint and then like storing it into a SQLite database for access by some.
I actually think, don't Red Hat have an operator framework? Not the operator framework, have like a early operator framework that just runs like kubectl in a bash for loop, like kubectl watch. I thought, is that true?
Oh no, it wasn't Red Hat that did that. It's called shell operator, and if I remember correctly, it might have been the Kinvolk folks.
Okay.
Yeah, shell operator. I was pretty.
We're totally not doing that. We are now using Go, so it's totally different now.
Yeah, Daniel's saying we've got 4 minutes of this time block left. If anybody wants to bring up other questions, help items, comments, concerns, or agenda items, or comments about their pets or anything. So, or cattle, if you want. I mean, maybe you're a rancher. So, cool. Well,
Super.
I would just say, like, thanks to everyone who's been joining these calls consistently, like staying up to date with the work that we've been putting in here. I think that the way we've governed this kind of sub-project has been very open. There's a lot of cross-collaboration from folks at different organizations, good participation, and I'm just really, really proud and grateful to be jumping on these calls and working with all of you. So thanks so much. Yeah.
I couldn't have said it better. Thanks, Lee.
If anyone's at KubeCon, we'll see you at lunch on Tuesday. Justin will find a place. So.
A glamorous corner, I'm sure.
Yeah, cool.
Most glamorous corner of the San Diego Conference Center I can find.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, yeah. Yeah, we will miss you there, Jessica. Sorry you won't be there this time. We'll make sure to have double the fun on your behalf.
Yeah, maybe next year.
Or in Europe, right? And, cool. All right. Well, we can probably close the meeting out.
Yes.
Notes are pretty good. I'll get that patch up, and I will eagerly await the node local stuff as well. Bye, everyone.
Cool. See you in 2 weeks.
Yep. Or next week. Yep.